30 years, I finally exposed my stepsister who made my life hell, and now my family knows the truth. I am a 40-year-old man, and I have been in a relationship with my wonderful wife for over 2 decades. Together, we have built a life filled with love and joy, and we are proud parents to 2 incredible daughters, both under 10 years old. These girls are the light of my life, and every decision I make is centered around providing them with the happiness and stability I never had growing up. On the surface, my life now appears calm and well-balanced. I work as a lawyer, a career that I have poured my heart into despite the grueling journey to reach this point. But my road here was anything but easy. For much of my life, I was ensnared in a relentless storm of torment and manipulation, orchestrated by someone I now refer to as the devil. This devil was none other than my stepsister. To give you a clearer picture of how this nightmare unfolded, let me take you back to my childhood. I was only 5 years old when my biological father passed away. Losing him at such a tender age was devastating, although I don't remember him much beyond fleeting images and vague impressions. His absence left a void in our family that my mother struggled to fill, as she raised me and my 2 brothers, one older and one younger, on her own. My mom was a strong woman, but even her strength was tested by the weight of raising 3 boys while dealing with her own grief. A few years later, when I was around 6 to 8 years old, my mom remarried. Her new husband, a widower, brought his own child into the fold, a daughter who was the same age as me. At first, I was cautiously optimistic about this new family dynamic. I was too young to understand the complexities of blending families, and part of me naively hoped that this union might bring some stability and happiness back into our lives. But the reality was far from my innocent expectations. From the very beginning, my stepsister made it painfully clear that she viewed my brothers and me as intruders in her life. To her, we were trespassers who had upended her world, and she was determined to make us pay. Her mission was as twisted as it was unwavering. She wanted to break apart our family and isolate her father from my mother, ensuring that they could live together in their own little world without us. And for reasons I'll never fully understand, she fixated her efforts on me, making me her primary target. Her methods were insidious and deeply calculated. In public, she wore the mask of a sweet, angelic girl. She was the kind of child who charmed adults with her politeness and disarming smile, creating an image of perfection that no one would ever think to question. But behind closed doors, her true nature revealed itself. She was cunning, cruel, and manipulative, spinning elaborate lies about me and my brothers to poison the minds of the adults in our lives. Over time, she succeeded. My stepfather and even my own mother began to view me as some sort of troublemaker, the source of all the family's problems. The transformation of my life was staggering. Seemingly overnight, I went from being a cherished son to a black sheep, cast aside and treated with suspicion and disdain. I couldn't understand why this was happening to me. As a child, I was too young to fully grasp the power of manipulation, especially when wielded so masterfully by someone as conniving as my stepsister. All I knew was that my world had turned upside down, and there was no escape. The injustices piled up one after another. While my brothers received allowances, I was given nothing. When they were allowed to drive, I was denied the same privilege. They were sent abroad for a year of study, a luxury that was never even considered for me. My friends were forbidden from visiting our home, isolating me further, and I was the only one in the family subjected to constant physical punishment. The disparity extended to even the most mundane aspects of life. In the 90s, when all my peers were getting their first cell phones, I wasn't allowed to have one. My freedom was stifled at every turn. Weekend trips with friends? Out of the question. Even simple outings required me to sneak out because asking for permission was a guaranteed no. My parents didn't just restrict me, they suffocated me. Worse still, I wasn't even allowed to work. While many teenagers find independence and a sense of accomplishment through part-time jobs, I was told that it was dangerous for me to have money. This decision wasn't about my safety, it was about control. It felt like every aspect of my life was deliberately stunted, leaving me dependent and voiceless. When I was in university, I finally caught a glimpse of hope. I was selected by a highly prestigious lawyer to work under him and gain invaluable experience. It was a dream come true in many ways, but it came with its own set of challenges. The lawyer was brilliant and an exceptional mentor, but he was notoriously stingy. His lack of financial support left me struggling to make ends meet. I couldn't afford to take my girlfriend on dates, and every request to borrow the family car turned into a battle. My parents' refusal to help me financially added another layer of frustration and humiliation. After a year of juggling university, work, court duties, client meetings, studying, and maintaining relationships, all without financial support, I reached my breaking. I needed a better paying job, so when another firm made me an offer, I reluctantly accepted. I'll never forget the look on my first mentor's face when I told him I was leaving. He understood my struggles and even despised my parents for how they treated me, but his own stinginess had made my decision inevitable. In the end, I was the only one cast out of the house, a final crushing blow to years of silent suffering. My eviction was less about a specific act of rebellion and more about years of my stepsister's tireless campaign to paint me as the problem child. My brothers stayed. Their relationships with my parents remained intact, and though they occasionally voiced concern about my treatment, they were also caught in the same web of manipulation and deceit. It was as though my stepsister had everyone under her spell. For years, I racked my brain trying to understand the source of my family's disdain. Why was I treated differently? Why was I the one who bore the brunt of their anger and mistrust? Despite countless attempts to expose my stepsister for the manipulative liar she was, I was always met with the same response: disbelief. It felt as though I was screaming into a void, desperate for someone to listen, but no one ever did. My family was obsessed with appearances. To the outside world, we were the epitome of unity. A perfect, blended family where love and harmony reigned supreme. Behind closed doors, it was a different story. Conflict, resentment, and cruelty festered beneath the surface. But any attempt to address these issues was quickly silenced. We were expected to keep up appearances at all costs, sweeping every problem under the rug. One of those buried secrets was the truth about my stepsister. Diagnosed with schizophrenia traits and other psychological disorders, she had even spent time in a psychiatric institution. But in my family's world, acknowledging this truth would shatter the illusion of perfection they worked so hard to maintain, so they ignored it. To them, if something wasn't spoken about, it simply didn't exist. This denial drove me to the brink of insanity. How could they not see what was right in front of them? How could they let her wreak havoc on our lives and still protect her? The years dragged on, and the weight of my family's rejection grew heavy. I was forced to distance myself from them, prioritizing my mental health and creating a life free from their toxicity. Fast forward 30 years, and I had finally found peace. My wife and daughters became my sanctuary, the family I had always longed for, but never had. My daughters brought a light into my life that I hadn't known existed, and my wife was the unwavering pillar of support I had always needed. Meanwhile, my stepsister, whom I now refer to as the devil, remained trapped in her own cycle of self-destructive behavior. At 40 years old, she was still single, living with and fully supporting a broke 60-year-old divorced man with a 6-year-old daughter. The man had no job, no money, and no prospect. Yet, my stepsister had chosen to take care of him. It was baffling, but also entirely in character. She thrived on chaos and control, and this arrangement gave her both. About 2 years ago, my mom and stepfather reached out to me for legal advice regarding their will and estate planning. Our relationship, though strained, had evolved into something cordial. While I had no intention of rekindling a deep connection, I agreed to help. As a lawyer, I could ensure their wishes were honored and that the process went smooth. But as always, my stepsister found a way to insert herself into the situation. When she discovered that my mom and stepfather had sought my assistance, she lost her mind. Her accusations came fast and furious. She claimed that my mom was trying to rob her of her rightful inheritance, insisting that as the only real daughter, she should be the sole heir. According to her twisted logic, my brothers and I were nothing more than opportunistic thieves, conspiring to steal what was hers. She vowed to destroy us all. My mom, my brothers, and me. Her venomous words were chilling, but I had come to expect nothing less. Then, things took a darker turn. My stepsister began spreading vicious rumors within the extended family, accusing my older brother of abusing her when we were younger, a claim that had no basis in reality. She went further, accusing me of molesting 2 of our cousins, a grotesque lie that sent shockwaves through the family. To make matters worse, she insinuated that my own daughters were in danger around, planting seeds of doubt and fear. Her fabrications were calculated to destroy my reputation, and for a moment, it felt like she might succeed. The fallout was immediate. My step-uncle, the father of one of the cousins I supposedly molested, was ready to take matters into his own hands. Fueled by rage, he threatened violence against me, and I'm convinced that the only thing that stopped him was the fact that we lived in different countries. The situation was spiraling out of control, and I knew I had to act quickly. Faced with the threat of my darkest secrets being weaponized against me, I made a difficult decision. I would get ahead of it. I gathered my courage, took my wife by the hand, and drove to my parents' house. There, I sat them down and told them everything, every embarrassing, painful detail of my past. I confessed to my attraction to trans women, something I had kept private for fear of judgment. I admitted to the secret kisses I had shared with one of the cousins I was accused of molesting. We were teenagers at the time, and we weren't even biologically related. Our families had simply decided to call us cousins for convenience. Nothing inappropriate had ever happened between us. But the truth of those innocent moments was enough to fuel my stepsister's lies. I also told them about my occasional smoking habits, fully aware of how deeply religious my parents were. We're talking Opus Dei levels of religiosity here, where even the mention of was akin to heresy. But I laid it all bare. I wanted my parents and my wife to hear the truth from me, not from my stepsister's twisted narrative. I laid everything on the table, every painful truth, every secret I had carried for years. And to my astonishment, my parents believed me. It was as if the scales had finally fallen from their eyes. The devil had tormented them for so long with her lies and manipulation that they began to see her for what she truly was. For the first time in my life, they acknowledged that maybe I wasn't the problem after all. It only took them 30 years, right? 30 years of pain, of being cast as the black sheep, of wondering why I was treated like an outsider in my own family. The validation was bittersweet. On one hand, I felt relief. Someone had finally listened. On the other, I couldn't help but think of all the years I had lost, all the moments stolen from me by their blind allegiance to the devil's lies. Then came the inevitable question, what do we do now? At this point in my life, I had dealt with my fair share of abusers. I knew their tactics, their need for control, and their reliance on fear to keep their victims silent. I thought back to the pain my father had inflicted on me before his death, when I was just 3 or 4 years old, and to the many other toxic dynamics I had endured since then. If there was one thing I had learned, it was that engaging with abusers only gave them more power. So I told my parents the truth. If they really wanted to expose the devil and regain control, they had to stop engaging with her altogether. They needed to let her attacks fall on deaf ears, to show her that her words and actions no longer held any sway over us. The key was silence. Abusers thrive on reactions. Take that away, and they lose their footing. We agreed on a plan. I would inform my brothers and half-brothers about the situation, and they too would commit to not engaging with it. It had to be a united front. The devil needed to believe that her attacks were ineffective. The more we ignored her, the more desperate she would become, and eventually she would make a mistake, one so blatant that she could no longer hide behind her facade of perfection. And when that happened, she wouldn't be able to play the victim. It's important to note that nobody outside the immediate family would ever believe us. The devil had spent decades cultivating an impeccable public image. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. To the extended family, she was practically a saint. But I knew better. I knew her true nature, and I knew that her downfall would come from within. We didn't talk to anyone about our plan, not even my stepfather's brother, who still wanted to kill me over her accusations. We denied nothing, engaged in nothing, and waited. The devil, of course, continued to threaten us, claiming she would go public with her truth, but she never did. Like most abusers, she relied on the fear of exposure to keep us in line. To actually reveal anything would mean losing her power. For 2 years, we maintained our silence. We didn't respond to her rants or acknowledge her lies. She was left to stew in her own anger, ranting and raving into the void. No one gave her the attention she so desperately craved, and I knew it was eating her alive. Then, 2 weeks ago, the perfect storm arrived. One of my stepbrothers got married, and the whole family gathered for the occasion. It had been a long time since we had all been in the same place, and the devil assumed that nothing had changed. She thought my wife and my brother's wife were still in the dark about her lies. She believed my brothers were clueless, unaware of the extent of her manipulations. She could not have been more wrong. At the wedding, no one greeted her. Her presence was ignored. Her desperate attempts at conversation brushed aside. Even her broke sugar daddy, a 60-year-old man with no money, no job, and a 6-year-old daughter, was met with indifference. Tons of pictures were taken throughout the event, but in most of them, she and her boyfriend were conveniently cut out. The next day, she snapped. For the first time, she made a mistake. In a fit of desperation, she texted my wife, unleashing a torrent of accusations and insults. She ranted about what a terrible person I was, claiming I was a danger to my daughters. She declared that we would never speak again, and offered to tell my wife the truth about me when she felt strong and ready. She thought she was dropping a nuclear bomb into my marriage, but little did she know, my wife already knew everything. In her desperation, the devil revealed a side of herself that she had kept hidden for decades. She showed her true colors, exposing the ugliness beneath her polished exterior, and I knew exactly what to do. After spending enough time on Reddit, I had learned a thing or two about handling situations like this. I screenshotted her text and sent it to our extended family group chat, the one with all the cousins, uncles, and everyone else. I finally exposed her after over 30 years, confronting her publicly and inviting her to tell everyone the truth she had been threatening to reveal for so long. She made her second mistake shortly after. Instead of retreating, she replied in the group chat, attempting to gaslight me. She downplayed everything, accusing me of overreacting and making a scene. She painted herself as the reasonable one, claiming I was blowing things out of proportion and behaving immaturely. It was classic deflection, but it only served to dig her hole deeper. Then came her third mistake. She texted my wife again, asking her to delete my crazy messages. She claimed that she only wanted to clear things up without drama and insisted there was no justification for my actions. Once again, I screenshotted the message and sent it to the group chat. This time, I made it clear. We would never have a private conversation again. If she had something to say, she could say it in front of the whole family. I invited her to share her truth with everyone, challenging her to back up her accusations. That's when she realized her fatal error. She wasn't in the immediate family chat, the one she was so used to manipulating. She was in the extended family group chat, where her lies and manipulations were exposed for everyone to see. The mask she had worn for so long had finally slipped. For the first time in decades, I felt like I had won. It has been 2 weeks since the wedding, and the group chat remains dead silent. Not a single message, not even a meme to break the tension. It's as if everyone is collectively holding their breath, unsure of what to say or how to process what they've witnessed. The silence speaks volumes, more than words ever could. For the first time, the extended family saw the truth about my stepsister, the cracks in her perfect facade. And while no one has come forward to comment on what happened, I know they're thinking about it. The seeds of doubt have been planted. A few days after the wedding, my mom called. Her voice was tentative, the same tone she used when she had something important to say, but wasn't sure how I would react. "I think I'm realizing," she began, her words slow and deliberate, "that I may have been wrong about you for almost your entire life. But you forgive me, right?" I froze, the question hanging in the air like a weight I wasn't prepared to carry. Forgive her? Could I? Should I? A part of me wanted to scream, to unleash decades of anger and pain and demand answers. Why did it take 30 years for her to see me for who I truly was? Why did she believe the lies for so long, even when I begged her to listen? But another part of me, the part that had spent years in therapy, working to heal, felt only exhausted. Carrying resentment wouldn't change the past, and it wouldn't bring me peace. "I don't know," I finally replied, my voice quiet. "I think I need time to figure that out." The truth was, I wasn't ready to forgive her. Not yet. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't something you can force. It's a process, one that takes time and effort. I couldn't just erase 30 years of hurt with a single conversation, no matter how sincere her apology might be. For the first time in my life, I feel safe. That realization hit me like a tidal wave. I never knew how much I had been living in fear. Fear of my stepsister's lies. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being cast out again. Now, with the truth exposed and her power stripped away, I can finally breathe. It's a feeling I'm still getting used to. But now that the dust has settled, I'm faced with a new challenge. How do I move? My family is starting to see me differently, to recognize the person I've always been. But do I even want a deeper relationship with them? The years of rejection and betrayal have left scars that may never fully heal. Part of me longs to rebuild those connections, while another part is wary of letting them back into my life. For now, I've decided to take things one step at a time. My relationship with my mom remains cordial. We see each other occasionally for family meals, but only when my stepsister is out of town. Those gatherings are small, just my mom, stepfather, older brother, and younger half-brothers, and I attend primarily for my daughter's sake. I want them to have a relationship with their grandparents and cousins, but my wife and I are careful to supervise those interactions. The past doesn't need to bleed into their future. Speaking of my wife, she is my anchor, my angel. I cannot overstate how much she means to me. She has stood by my side through every storm, offering unwavering support and love. There were moments when I doubted myself, when the weight of it all felt unbearable, but she was always there to remind me of my worth. Together, we have built something beautiful, a life filled with love, trust, and resilience. It hasn't been easy, and it's certainly not for everyone, but it's ours, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. As for my stepfather, our relationship has undergone a transformation I never thought possible. Growing up, our interactions were often brutal, marked by conflict and misunderstanding. But at the wedding, he surprised. For the first time in my life, he told me he loved. Those 3 words, spoken with sincerity, brought tears to my eyes. I didn't cry at the wedding, God forbid. But later, in the quiet of my home, I let the emotions wash over. It was a moment of healing I hadn't realized I needed. Despite everything, I don't carry a grudge against my mom. She did the best she could under impossible circumstances. Raising 3 children alone after my father's death must have been unimaginably difficult. She made mistakes. Who wouldn't? But I've come to understand that her actions weren't born out of malice. She was trying to survive, to do what she thought was right at the time. And while those choices caused me pain, I choose not to dwell on them. Holding on to that resentment would only weigh me down. And then there's the devil herself, my stepsister. For decades, she ruled our family with fear and manipulation, her lies tearing us apart. But now, her power is gone. Her own actions have exposed her for what she truly is. The extended family may not say it outright, but I know they see the cracks in her story. Her desperate attempts to regain control have only isolated her further. Where do I go from here? I'm not entirely sure. The road ahead feels uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I'm okay with that. I've learned that healing isn't linear. It's messy and complicated, filled with setbacks and breaks, but I'm ready to keep moving forward, to embrace the life I've built with my wife and daughters, and to leave the pain of the past where it belongs. To anyone reading this, thank you. Sharing my story has been cathartic, a way to process everything I've been through. If you're dealing with a toxic family member or struggling to find your own sense of safety, know that it's possible. It takes time, patience, and a willingness to fight for yourself, but it's worth it. I'm living proof of that. Edit 1. I must clarify that despite several differences with my stepfather growing up, our relationship today is close to beautiful. It was brutal at times, but we've both grown. His words at the wedding meant more to me than he'll ever know. Edit 2. I also want to emphasize that I'm not judging anyone for their actions or choices. I take full responsibility for how I've handled my life and the decisions I've made. I'm not playing the victim. I'm simply sharing my experience as it happened. My mom did what she thought was best, and I hold no resentment toward her. The past doesn't have to define our relationships today, and I'm committed to fostering healthy, positive connections wherever I can. Thank you for reading, and I welcome any thoughts or suggestions you might have.